Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. And I'm George Binns, and we're still in election season. And the guest this evening is our candidate for re-election to Ward 6 City Council, Matt St. Hilaire, or Matthew J. to be precise.
Sure.
Welcome, Matt. So, you've been out around gathering signatures. How many do you have to get, by the way? I was wondering.
It's 50 signatures for a
Oh,
ward
it's only
councilor.
50 for a
Certified.
ward? Yeah. That's sure it takes a few more to get that, yeah. Because some people write their name in strange hieroglyphics, yeah. And so what are you hearing? What are the concerns that you're picking up?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you, George, for the invitation, and it's an honor to be here and talking to the voters about issues facing our city. I think what I hear most this summer has been about trash and recycling pickup.
Yeah.
It's almost an everyday occurrence is, when is the trash coming this week and when is the recycling going to come? So that's been a big, I think, issue this summer. But beyond that, some of the issues that have been more long-lasting are things like the rising cost of living, affordability, and I think it's something that's hitting at all income levels, affecting seniors, families, working families in different ways. I hear a lot about the state of our Beverly Public Schools, especially in the aftermath of last year's historic teacher strike and sort of what is the direction of our school system. Still hear a lot about the condition of our roads and sidewalks, which in many neighborhoods are in crumbling state and are becoming a public safety issue in a lot of places. I hear a lot about speeding, pedestrian traffic issues, safety, public safety issues along our streets. And, I think underlying all of it is just the polarized national political environment, a lot of frustration and anxiety about the state of the world.
Yeah. There's no telling what's going to happen, and it varies from hour to hour, it seems like. Yeah. And so it's a moving target. So Beverly's, you got through the budget this year, and I guess we've been warned several times that 2007 is going to be crunch time, and there is talk of forming a committee, and I don't think they've actually done it yet on the city council, to investigate an override. And at the same time, you get into the issues, I guess, that the override is ostensibly to cover the added cost of the school settlement, the BTA settlement. That's my understanding. Is that accurate?
I don't know. There is no override formally proposed at this point.
No, it's,
right?
yeah. But I think that's what the drift is I'm picking up. And it gets to be difficult for the city council because technically you guys don't worry about the school committee and the school system. That's their job. And you just get a number. But yet you're going to be asked to approve it. So it doesn't mean you have to get into it somewhat. So you mentioned this, a little bit of consternation about the school system. What are you hearing specifically about it?
Yeah, I think my perspective on this is, and I chair the Finance and Property Committee. I've chaired the last 2 budget hearings. I've actually voted against the city budget the last 3 years in a row. Yeah. And, I'm a little frustrated with the conversation that's been happening. I think it's a matter of prioritization, and our local government, we have $173 million that we spent in our budget this year. And the budget document is this thick. Yeah. It's got hundreds of line items. Myself and maybe one other colleague introduced amendments this year to the budget, and none of them get adopted. And to me, this budget cut 29 positions in our schools. Our police and fire are both understaffed significantly compared to national benchmarks. As I mentioned before, our roads and sidewalks are crumbling, and this budget zeroed out any funding for road and sidewalks in our operating budget. So to me, we're not meeting the most fundamental needs through our budget process. Yet this budget contains lots of items that I view as nice to haves, in a vacuum, maybe wonderful things. But how can we afford all of these things when we're cutting from our schools and we're understaffed in public safety and we're not paving our roads. So to me, that's the rub, and I think some of my colleagues view it as we just need more money, but I look at it as we have $173 million. Let's prioritize and use that money the most efficiently we can. And I'm not sure we've done that, right? When we rubber stamp a budget that's this thick and make no cuts, I don't see how that can be. And so for me, the mayor's budget is the proposed budget, and we go through a process of reviewing it and approving it. And a lot of things, like I said, in a vacuum are wonderful. But we've added a lot of staff in the mayor's office. You know, the mayor goes on travel all over the country. I think there was an article where he was the second leading mayor in all of Massachusetts in terms of his travel expenses. Is that appropriate when we're cutting teachers and we don't have enough police and fire and we can't pave our roads? And so to me, there's some work that we need to do first in making sure that, you know, the mayor's proposed budget is adequately directed towards our priorities first. And so I don't know that we've gone through that process. And so for me, the idea of saying we need more money is a wonderful idea, but I'm not sure I can go to taxpayers and make that pitch today.
Yeah. Well, I think the problems that's been brought out in terms of everything the government does costs more.
Yeah.
But that's the same problem that the taxpayers are facing, that everything we do
100%.
costs
There's no
more.
ATM I can go to.
Yeah.
Right?
And yeah, the city can go out and borrow money, and I think they've made a number of pitches that they're very scrupulous about how much borrowing and what our bond rating is and all that good stuff. But sooner or later, it's got to be paid. So it's not really free money.
No.
And it's a debt that somebody's going to have to pay sooner or later. So I think we're being somewhat frivolous in saying that, well, we can borrow some money and pay for this and pay for that and take on all these major projects like renovating the city hall for, you know, $3.4 million or whatever the number works out to be.
We make spending decisions all the time in the city on things, you know, that a lot of them I've opposed, right? Yeah. Increasing management salary increases every year and raising the salary of elected officials and spending $200,000 on electric vehicle buses during the middle of a teacher strike, right, out of free cash, right? Yeah. You'd reference the library, the $18 million expenditure proposed for a geothermal HVAC system. You know, we're spending money hand over fist all over the place, and we're agreeing to it every single day, and very rarely do we ever stand up and say no. And this is the consequence to that. Yeah. And to me, you know, we need to start prioritizing our schools, we need to start prioritizing public safety, and we need to start prioritizing our roads and sidewalks. And I think part of the issue with local government is, you know, it is a very tight, the margin of error is very little, right? And so when you're not laser focused on those priorities and you're trying to solve all these other problems, this is what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to have two DEI managers in the city, but really, what do they contribute to the real problems?
Yeah, and listen, the mayor's office, when Mayor Cahill came in, was an executive secretary and the mayor. And today it's an executive secretary, a chief of staff, a constituent services director, a grants director, two sustainability directors, a DEI director. We have a DEI director in the schools. I mean, these have all been added positions, right? And to the tune of six-figure salaries in a lot of cases over multiple years. You're talking about millions and millions of dollars that have been spent in that time. And could that money have been better utilized? To your point, what are we getting from those positions? Yeah. That's the discussion that I think is valuable to have.
Well, one of the things that I've been trying to get the grants director to appear on BevCam with me, and I tend to think she's paying her own way, that she does bring in enough money in the city that...
I've come around on that position. I opposed it when it was created. We were receiving grant money long before we had a grants director, right? And so to me, she's doing a great job. And again, in a vacuum, every one of these positions you could say is worthwhile. Yeah. But at the time when you're cutting staff from the schools, and how are our schools doing, right? Yeah. And I think that needs to be part of this discussion. Is our schools in a good? Do we have a good year last year? I think not.
No,
You know, what is the honest state, and what are we doing to fix that?
well, the usual resource I go to is niche for what's the school doing, and invariably you can go through it grade by grade, and it's barely 50% of the students are meeting expectations. So,
This was one of my most frustrating pieces of the budget, and I met with Dr. Cushing, the new superintendent, recently, and expressed this to him. Was, you know, the presentation of the budget last year was as if everything was wonderful in our schools, and we're spending at a historic level. Isn't that great? You know, and I think that fails to meet the reality of the experience. And what you're referencing are some of the testing scores,
Yeah.
which, you know, I think a lot of parents have been talking about. You talk to the school committee or the school department, and they'll say that those are, you know, unfair measures, that that's not how you measure success of a school. And, you know, I sort of put it back to the new superintendent. What is success? You know, show me what success looks like. Dr. Trocek, you know, commented that there are challenges at the middle school. I think most people would agree.
yeah.
So how does that reflect in this budget when we're cutting an assistant principal and we're cutting positions from the middle school? How are we addressing that need, right?
Yeah, the middle school is probably the most challenging of the three, the upper school, the high school, and the
It's the largest middle
elementary.
school in the state.
Yeah, and there are things I think that, like you say, do we really need all that? And the other one that surprises me is the number of vehicles going around town with the logo on the door.
Yeah.
And they come in three different colors that I've found so far. There's the white ones, there's some green ones, and some yellow ones. That the city's got one heck of a fleet.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed a piece of a tree came down on the corner of my property. It was on the city's property, actually. And they did a marvelous job picking it up. And but they've got their own equipment that looks just like what Iron Tree or the other professional outfits carry. And you start to wonder what's the break-even point of saying, do we buy the equipment ourselves and we do it ourselves, or do we outsource it to the professionals that have the equipment and just hire them to do it?
Yeah, I think these are the conversations we need to be having, George. And this line item actually came up during the budget process, which was a capital outlay for vehicles. And again, it's wonderful to have the vehicles we need, and I'm not saying, you know, that it's not wonderful to have that truck, but at a time where, again, we're cutting teachers in from our schools, and we're zeroing out our roads and sidewalks, what are we doing?
Yeah. So it's going to be a challenging year, and I wish you guys luck. And it'll be difficult. And we get to the issues, I guess, of how do you get the message across as to this is what's really going on. And
Well, I think the rubber is going to meet the road. At some point, we're not going to have enough money, and I think that's going to come very soon in FY27. We're going to have to make some hard decisions. I think there's some folks looking to have a windfall of money come in from the taxpayers, but I don't think that's a realistic expectation. And I think at some point, we're going to have to deal with the budget we have and make priorities.
well, Prop 2.5 limits the total amount of revenue you can raise in a given year. So even if you go out and reassess all the property in town,
And we're at the max.
yeah, and it doesn't increase it because you can't increase by more than 2.5%.
And not only that, there's a shift in the tax rate that you can apply to commercial, and we're already at the max to that as well, right? There's no more room to go, and so this is the frustrating thing for me, because as leaders on the council, we're in a position where we have to make the tough decisions, right? There's no more easy decisions, and to me, I think, they're looking for a bailout to say, the taxpayers will pay more, they're interested in doing this, but I don't know how you can make that case.
Well, it'd be nice to be able to pay more, but back to the point I made earlier that the taxpayers are suffering from the same kind of inflation
Well,
problems.
cost of living is one of the top issues in the city.
Yeah.
Affordability.
Yeah.
I don't see an appetite from folks to say, I've got all this free cash to spend more, my tax money, right? I don't, and maybe an argument will be made, but, to me, let's talk, what is the deficit for FY27? What is the real need? I haven't really heard that from folks advocating for an override. I don't think they even know what it is they're trying to solve for.
Yeah.
And so the gut reaction of we just need more money, to me, is premature. Let's do the work. Let's figure out what the needs are. And then let's make some real tough decisions on what are our priorities. Let's fund those things. And the things that maybe aren't on that list, maybe we need to cut and come back to when we're doing a little bit better in terms of managing those things.
Yeah, you get to the nice to-dos that you can spend some free cash on if you got it, but in reality, the free cash is already earmarked for roads and sidewalks, whatever is left of it. So it's limited, and
For
we
1
get into
year.
a situation where the city just bought the dollar store for $7.3 million, and we really can't afford to renovate it to take care of the overflow while we're working on this city hall. So now we own the property. Yeah, we got a parking lot, but at the same time, the city's got to go look elsewhere to find some space to put people in if they renovate the city hall. And that raises the question of, should we be, excuse me, should we be raising city hall?
Yeah, I have real questions about that, George, and this was part of the discussion during the budget as well, and another frustration for me, which is, as I mentioned, the middle school is the largest middle school in the state.
Yeah.
We made a decision 10 years ago to build that school.
Yeah.
Was that the right decision? Are part of the issues in the middle school related to the size of the school? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
But we should be talking about that. Are there space needs for our school, right? We use McEwen as an administrative building. It was built to be a school.
Yeah.
Right? And so to me, are there needs within our school system, for additional space, whether it be for students or for administrators? I don't hear that as part of the discussion in our capital plan. I don't hear that. I hear about renovating City Hall. I don't know who that benefits, George.
Yeah.
The Family Dollar building, as you proposed, was built to avoid a potential development, but there's no plan on what is the next step with that. Could that house administrative staff? Could that, house temporarily City Hall? I don't know. But to me, these are the discussions that we're not having.
Well, that's one of the things that surprised me about the discussion about the library. That, okay, you started off with $3 million and change, and then 2 years later it comes in at $18 million. And as you mentioned, it was part of that cost was going to be the ground source heat pump. Okay, I'm all in favor of them. They're very efficient.
Sure.
They work great. And then a comment came out that says, well, the soil is not exactly what we would like. So it sounds like we're forcing a solution to solve a non-problem. And in my line of work, you always have to come up with a payback plan.
100%.
So if you're going to invest some money to theoretically save some money, I want to see the analysis that says, we really do save it? And the question I would like to have asked.
In 70 years.
Yeah, that too, yeah. That gets to be another issue of what the hell the payback period is, yeah. But how many extra holes do we have to drill in the ground to make a heat pump work with this less than ideal soil? It doesn't come up, it doesn't get answered. And you start to wonder about what else has been slipping through the cracks. And
Right, and how is this the priority in not addressing the schools or our roads or our public safety,
Yeah.
right? And that to me was the frustrating part on that one. And I was glad to see the city council stand up and vote that down. I think that was a fiscally irresponsible
Yeah.
project and was not consistent with what I think the priorities are.
yeah. So what I'm gathering is your priorities are we need to sort out the schools. Do we need more people? What kind of people? What talents do we need? And
What does success look like for our school district?
yeah, that's really what it comes down to is Are we creating a school system that only feeds kids into college? At the same time, way back when, we had our own trade school and got to cut a deal with the state that says, okay, if we don't build a trade school on the new high school, then all the kids can go to Essex Tech. Well, that didn't quite work out. And I noticed there are some school systems around that they're starting to do some technical work in the regular school. And I'm all in favor of hands-on learning. And I don't see this happening. This is one of my pets, among others, that I think you're right that there's a whole bunch of issues that need to be addressed, and they're just not being talked about. So anyway, we've come to the point where it's your turn to make your pitch and why everybody should vote for you to be the city councilor again.
Well, thank you, George, and thank you to BevCam. I do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your audience about the issues in government and in our city. I love serving as a city councilor, representing the residents of Beverly Farms, Centerville, Prize Crossing. This is my second term, completing here as a ward councilor. I am running for re-election as to a third term. I think for voters out there, I'm focused on being responsive to constituents, improving our neighborhoods, being a leader on the council, advocating for fiscal responsibility, especially in the state of this budget deficit we're facing, focusing on local issues, right, that affect our city the most, our schools, our roads and sidewalks, our paving of our streets and roads, in public safety. I bring good experience. I served as an at-large councilor previously. I've worked in government for 4 different governors in the governor's office. Currently a senior vice president in the private sector with a construction company focused on infrastructure and transportation projects. I am currently unopposed on the ballot in November, and I humbly ask voters of Ward 6 for their vote for re-election. So thank you.
Good. Well, looks good. Yeah, let's say it that way. And I doubt if there's going to be a write-in campaign. Yeah. And you get to those kinds of issues that sooner or later somebody's got to step up and say, hey, is this the right thing to do? And I think what you've been talking about this evening is you're one of the guys that does that. And
not always the most popular in the council.
No, and there's always the point of view that, okay, we should spend more money. And I always keep coming back to Einstein's comment that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is insanity. And I think this is one of the things I think you've been pointing out is that we really need to look deeper into what are we doing and why are we doing it, and what do we expect? I think I like that idea of what do we consider to be success in the schools? And as I mentioned, I've got a bug about trade schools, but
my daughter's a junior at Essex Tech, and it's been a great experience for her.
Yeah. And what's she taking?
Vet science.
Vet science, yeah. That was one of the things that surprised me. Was they had a breakfast with seniors at the senior center, and I met a couple of young ladies there that were interested in veterinary science, and one of them I asked them, well, why aren't you going to Essex Tech? And her answer was, well, I didn't want to leave my friends. Okay, you get comfortable and not ready to move off into something new. But the other one said, I didn't realize I could go to college from there.
That's right.
Whoops. And again, this is the kind of thing that I think that you have to go around knocking on doors or actually meeting the people to find out there are these little glitches here and there that that's where the emphasis ought to be, or that's what we need to be fixing. And
yeah, I think we ought to be able to at least look at ourselves and say last year was not a good year for our schools. And
Yeah.
what do we need to do to make it better?
Yeah.
And I think that's the honest conversation that folks are looking for. That's what I shared with the superintendent, and that's what I hope will be a big subject of discussion in this election.
Yeah, and yeah, we had a tough season with the COVID, but that was 5 years ago now. And how long is it going to take to recover from that problem? And one of the things I mentioned I had a discussion with the superintendent also, what about AI? And the kids are using it, whether you like it or not, because, hey, when I went to school and you got an assignment, you went to the library and you copied something out of the Britannica. Nowadays, you just Google something, and I even noticed Google comes up with a little sign that says AI source.
Well, and this is part of the frustration with the budget as a whole is what can we be doing differently? The world is constantly changing.
Yeah.
We're building a whole new city hall. That's the proposal. When a lot of the services have been moved to online, and what is the future of some of these services?
Yeah.
Are you going to continue to need to go to City Hall? I don't know how often you go to City Hall anymore, right? And to me, that approach needs to be taken across our city. Is how can we do things differently?
And what it comes down to, like you say, I get a tax bill every quarter, and I get a water and sewer bill and a personal property tax bill, and all I do is type into the Bank of America, and they send a check.
Yeah.
I never be there. So, like I say, it's a real issue, I guess. So, what is city government, and how does it really
Well,
function?
and a lot of these line items in our budget have existed for decades,
Yeah.
okay? And there needs to be some challenging of what we've always done, and is that still applicable in today's world? And what could that be in 10 years, right? And so we need more leadership on that.
Yeah. So, well, thanks again for joining us, and best of luck.
Thank you, George. It's been a pleasure as always.
Yes, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. And as I mentioned, my email address is in the credits. So if you've got a comment, please send me a note. And if you have a longer comment, there's room for you here at the table. And stay tuned, and we'll be back.